coming apart at the seams is not a pretty picture, as you can see here. And yet, there are many times when we do come apart at the seams, that there is something so major in our life that we feel like we are disintegrating. And those events, those crises, can be the loss of a deeply cherished dream, the loss of dear friends and loved ones, a sense of a physical change in our body where we don't have the strength or stamina that we're usually counting on. And of course, it can also mean the diminishment of our resources, either financial or mental or in some way material. All of these are very hard things to have to deal with, and yet we do. I would like to share with you some ways of looking at this which may give you a sense of how you can enter into these conditions with more confidence. But first of all, the natural reaction to having something come apart, falling apart, is to go into judgment. We go from bad to worse, from good to bad, from right to wrong, from dark to light. We just go all over the map, and it's all about thinking this is not supposed to be happening to me, and there couldn't be anything good about this horrible thing that's happening. So that's our first response, judgment. And then a second response, which is really quite natural, is the wish to avoid. Okay, I'm going to avoid all this. I am going to be so busy. I'm going to work so hard that it can't touch me. Or to resist it in another way by wanting to escape. Escaping through the use of alcohol, drugs, shopping, television, going into fantasy somehow so that we don't have to face what's going on. Well, the third avoidance technique is to take our mind out of the present, to live in the past, to think, oh, it was so nice in the old days, or to go to the future and say, I would much rather live this fantasy. There's a drawback not being present in the moment. And that drawback is that our body and the solution to what's going on now requires some intelligence. If you're not in the body, then who's minding the fort? So, when it comes to dealing with falling apart at the seams, coming apart, we need to step away from judgment and simply look at what's happening in the moment. And second, we need to stop resisting and show up to do something about what's going on. So here's our turning point. The turning point has everything to do with the story that we're telling ourselves. Think of sunset. Sunset equates to the sun dropping down behind the earth. It's called darkening of the light. And darkening of the light typically means, nighttime. Nighttime means going to sleep. Now, when you think about going to sleep, you don't stop to go into fear and say, if I go to sleep, I'll never wake up. Instead, because you've been going to sleep for every night of your life, you go to sleep and you really have the trust that you're going to wake up in the morning. So we have two things going on here. We could go into fear, or we can stay with a sense of trust. There's two ways of looking at going to sleep at night. We can also look at darkening of the light as a time in which the light has been reduced so much we can't see all the daily distractions. Instead, it has narrowed down, and only that which is the loudest and the strongest remains in focus. And that's indeed where our attention needs to be right now. So the darkening of the light is simply narrowing down the focus to get our attention on what needs to be done right now. A third piece is in the daylight, we are filled with delightful or not so delightful distractions of daily living. But the nighttime, the time of introspection, takes us into a different kind of light. It is that inner light, that connection with our inner resources and understanding, and literally leading us toward enlightenment. So, do you have a situation in your life which is filling you with angst and making you feel unsettled? If so, I invite you to look at the story that you're telling yourself. For example, when I had a very dear friend who was going through the throes of cancer and all of that involves, I could look at it as, oh, my friend is dying of cancer. Her life is over. It's meaningless. Or I could and chose to look at it as, my friend is living with a condition called cancer. And during this living, during this present moment, she is involved in so many ways of living to the fullest and looking at all the ways that one can lead a healthy life. Whether or not she survives, she is really living in the moment more fully than she did before when she was healthy. So again, I ask you, what story are you telling yourself? Now I realize that when we are in the pits and things are really seeming to be overwhelming, it's hard to move out of that space. So in the exercises that I'm going to share with you shortly, I am going to offer you a few ways in which you can begin to move your energy, to turn your energy into a new direction. Life offers us many obstructions, but some of them are really, really big. Nature, a really big obstruction, like an abyss, is a beautiful thing, a very natural thing, like the abyss that we have here in Sedona, Arizona. It's natural, it's beautiful, it's stunning, it's inspiring. But the kind of obstructions that we face in our lives are often like a big hole in which something has gone away. Maybe a dream that we've cherished has been lost, or we've lost a loved one, or a job that we enjoyed, our home, our direction in life. These are big holes. These big holes can really bring us to a screeching halt. Now I'd like to share with you just a couple of techniques of what to do when you're faced with an abyss, a big hole. The first thing I'm going to suggest, and it may make you laugh, is to simply have a tantrum. Children, when they're obstructed, will do this. They'll stomp their feet and they'll yell and they'll jump up and down. And it's a wonderful way of, well, expressing their displeasure, but it's also a great way for us to acknowledge where we are in the moment. We are not happy with this, and that's a truth. Now, when you are faced with an obstruction, quite often you're going to find yourself clinging to the cliff. That's hard. You don't want to move. You're afraid of falling way, way down in the pits. Sometimes this is represented with what we call analysis paralysis. You don't want to move because you don't want to make a mistake, and that's hard. Again, we need to create a little bit of space. We need to move the energy just a notch. So, if you can find it in your heart to do a little dance, to go take a hike, particularly out in nature if possible, to go to the gym, or to empty your closet, or your chest of drawers, or your kitchen cabinets to rearrange them, or go into the living room and move all the furniture around. All of these actions are a way of shifting energy, and that little energetic shift creates a space. It creates a change. And what happens is that little space allows room for some little insight to come in, to tell you which step to take next. Now, it may be a small step, but at least it's the first step in shifting from clinging to the edge of your abyss and moving on to getting through it into safer and happier territory.